The Wolf by Margaret Bartlett and Jane Tanner. The first time Tal heard the wolf, he didn't believe it. He went back to sleep. The next time it woke all of them, but after a while they fell asleep again. Next morning in the kitchen, however, things were not the same. Around the breakfast table, they began to discuss wolves. They don't live here, in this country, their mother said firmly. Where do they live, Di? The youngest asked. Tal and Megan looked at each other. Mother didn't answer. Then it was time to go to school, and they forgot about Di's question. That night, Tal heard the wolf in their own garden. Next morning, before their mother was even awake, Tal got out the encyclopedia. We live in open, peaceful country. We always have. Megan was close to tears. They can't come here. Together they looked at their colored pictures. There was a wolf eating a bloody moss reed leaking into the snow. Tal shut the book. They knew Di must never see it. That night, Tal was unable to go to sleep. He thought of the hill that sheltered their house, the trees and rocks they had always played amongst. They knew every tree and every rock. They always walked to school. Their friends came over to play. As he went to sleep, Tal thought, I think of it always as a sunlit peaceful. I know it rains, but I think of it as a peaceful place. He woke to Di's scream, the house shaking as their mother ran downstairs to lock the windows. The howling went on and on. He knew it was the wolf coming closer. It was worse than he could ever imagine. It was worse than his nightmares. The worst thing coming closer every night. The next day, without even mentioning wolves, their mother outlined some of the new rules. They would have to always play inside. The doors would have to be bolted and barred. Here, mother looked at Tal. He was sometimes careless. What about school? Tal asked. The mother frowned. I'll have to take you in the car. Every day? Megan asked and stopped. Of course it'll be every day. I wasn't thinking. The night the mother went around the house, bolting shut all the windows. Some of them had never been bolted before and stuck. She had to force and wedge them shut. It took a long time. It was dark by the time she had finished. I'm covered in lumps, announced Di at breakfast. He pulled up his pajama jacket, his chest and tummy looked like an archipelago. They weren't there yesterday, Mother decided. Let's see if they go by tomorrow. She packed the bag to take out to the car. New routine, they all followed her and jumped in as she shut the front door. I just missed you say something, anything. South Florida as they drove off to school. Spoke about the wolf. She had just changed everything. Is she the wolf? I don't know. Oh, he's sad. Next day, those lumps had grown together from islands to continents. It must be something he ate, Mother pretended, rubbing in the cream they used for mosquito bites. It might be the wolf, told Fort silently. Just the idea of it. That night, Tal awoke aware that Di had been crying for some time. Oh, that's why he's crying, okay. Megan stood helplessly by his bed. Mother came downstairs from her bedroom. What's the matter? Have you had a dream? No, I'm crying because the wolf's come. Because it used to be safe and now it's not. Tal heard his mother kiss Di and took him in her own bed. Later it heard crying again. On secret at school, Tal read all about families who had lived surrounded by wolves. He looked at the snow and tundra with the wolves proud. At home, their garden was turning into a wilderness. At night, they ate dinner trying to talk of other things to argue the way they had before the wolf came. Mother often turned on the radio so that there would be a cheerful background noise. After a few weeks, Tal noticed that she always hummed the same tune, a new one that went down and down. In bed, he would hear the howling coming closer and closer, leaping over.
You reading something? Oh, right.
In bed, he would hear the howling coming closer and closer, leaping over the garden wall. Then he would hear the wolf prowling around the house, testing every doorknob, pressing every window latch. Some nights he lay rigid with fear so that he had to turn on his bedroom light. He would fall asleep with it on. Is that the wolf or a dog? It's a cat. In the kitchen one weekend when Megan and Di were watching television, he asked about his cat. What if I left it out? His mother turned horrified, her hands covered in flour. I mean, would that satisfy the wolf? Would it go away? Oh, love, she said, hugging him. Of course it wouldn't. What if it went out? He said, beginning to cry. Beware for Megan and Di's little. She hugged him again. Tal, I know what you mean, but you can't make it go away. Can anyone? No. Megan had been the loudest girl he had ever known. Now she's so busy that she didn't have time to shout, I want to make it like before the wolf came. I'll think about that every day, she said, brushing her teeth that night. But you can't. Tal said kindly. Well, I will, she shouted and ran into her own room. Later through the wall, we heard her beginning to hum. Same final tune that his mother always sang. Months passed. They stopped talking about the wolf. Came every night, and they were no longer shocked. Tal had his birthday and asked a few friends. He played his records very loud, and after they left the road, no one had even mentioned the wolf. I don't think it's as loud as it used to be anymore, he said, and from the front, this just looks like a normal house. I was startled, then interested. What the hell is going on in this story? That night, he sat in his room, surrounded by all new presents, more than usual. He guessed to make up for the wolf. He thought of the time before the wolf came and saw it as distant grey and sunlit, his family a dream that he could never go back to. It was like being younger, he thought. That too was dear to him, and yet he couldn't even have it back again. In the flames of the candles of his cake, he had seen himself unable to go back ever to the last year. A week after his birthday, when they were washing up, his mother said out of a long silence, I think you're right, it's definitely not softer than it used to be. It's still close again. Mum, there's a boy at school whose family lived surrounded by wolves for a whole year. Oh, what did they do? The same as us, boarded up the windows, stayed inside all the time. And now? Oh, it's a different country, Mum, not here. Tal noticed that while the wolf still prowled around every night, it often whined and growled instead of howling. Once Tal went to the window at night in the silence between its howls, he could hear it outside, scratching and panting. He imagined its tongue bobbing on an open jaw among the row of teeth. He put his face up to the boards one night, but all he could see was a crack of night sky. Half a year passed. Megan had her birthday, and Di adapted life inside, inventing new games for them on the stairs. Tal supposed they might never go outside into the garden again. That sucks. Then towards the end of the year, his mother put down her papers as he came to say goodnight. It was something from work as usual. I'd like you not to tell the others this, Tal, but I've seen the wolf. I took it down a board from a high up window. As Tal stared, she said, he's not as big as I thought. A week later, Tal had a dream. A voice came out of the night. He couldn't tell from where. As the voice spoke, he said one thing over and over again. Let it in, let it in. Only when he woke up did he realize that the voice was his own. Okay. Tal crept downstairs before it was light to bake Mum's cake on the morning of her birthday. He always did this. When the cake was in the oven, he made himself some breakfast. Suddenly he had a rasping. Something was snoring right outside the kitchen door. Suddenly he had to see. He went and found a strong kitchen knife and levered off one end of a board. It cracked as he took it away. Sunlight flooded his face, as startling as the sight of the wolf, awakened by the sound, bounding away in fright over their garden wall. When his mother saw the missing board, she smiled. Tal was so relieved that himself telling her about his dream and the voice saying, let it in, let it in. Oh, I've had the same dream lately, she said. That night he had the dream again. He awoke in the dark, still hearing the voice in his pajamas. He went down the stairs. He could hear the wolf outside the door whining. Suddenly he realized it was almost morning, half light. He wanted more than anything to go outside. Let it in, said the voice at his elbow. With reckless movement, he took down the bar, cobwebbed and dirty, and opened the lock on the door. Then he pulled open the door wide and stood back. There stood the wolf, dirty and thin. Its hair was matted and grey. It looked at him, limped past into the living room, and lay down in front of the dying fire's warmth. It led muddy footprints in its tail, knocked down a magazine. Outside the garden waited, green and wonderful, just touched with the colour of sunrise. Tal went and woke the others and led them, holding Di's hand, down to the living room. I let the wolf in, he said proudly. He smiled. I think it might be coming a dog. That's a weird book.